feedback. It helps to get feedback because then you can make changes.
Matt,
Yes?
she needs one of these.
Got it. Fine. Again, no name. It's anonymous.
Thanks.
One thing you like, one thing you don't like. And I'll collect them at the end. Okay, other than that, the goal... Yeah, that's fine. Here, I'll give you one for him, too. It's here. All right. I don't think there's any way for me to raise this up, so... All right, so the review. This is review, and the way we're going to do this review is a contest like we did before. So I'll ask questions, and then we'll keep points for answers, and it's just for bragging rights. And the way everybody's sitting right now, I think we'll divide it up as. You want to do it right down the middle?
It's easier. We got Lucy, so we're even odds against all of them.
Okay, well, we'll go for right down the middle, and hopefully a couple more people will come in. We'll see. Okay, so first, lesson 31, if you remember, it was on, the title of that lesson was One Race, the Human Race. A couple of points where the nations of the world were divided by family groups based on the separation of languages at the Tower of Babel. Hi, Evan. Scattering from Babel sent civilization back to the Stone Age. Remember, because the family groups were all divided up, they wouldn't have had all of that inter-society help from each family group. They were separated. God made all the people from one blood, and there is only one race that descended from Adam and Eve. The differences that we see in facial features, hair, skin type, skin color, hair texture, eye shape are all due to genetic traits that were part of the families as they carried them to the different regions of the world. God appoints the times and the extent of the nations throughout history. Babel shows that cavemen were descendants of Adam and Eve who were intelligent people made in the image of God but living under difficult circumstances. So, let's open it up for first questions related to lesson 31. Okay, first question. We're going to start on the left, since we got more people on the left. First question, and we ask that, let's try and work the questions around. If you answer one, then let somebody else answer another one. Why would Shem, the middle child, be listed first in this verse? Right? Usually we'd see the families listed by order of birth. But in this case, Shem is not the oldest. But yet he's listed first. There was a reason for that. Does anybody know why?
Maybe because he knew more?
Hey, wait. It's these guys' turn. All right. No answers? I'm going to go to this side. Okay?
Because he's in the lineage of Christ.
Because he is in the lineage of Christ. That's right. All right, so that's 1 point for this side. All right, good. God is listing by order of importance relative to Christ.
How do you spell that word?
Which what?
Lineage.
Lineage? I don't know. All right, question 2. So this is back to this side. What factors make it difficult to determine where the various families settled after the Tower of Babel? So I don't know if you remember, during the lesson, we had a graph that showed in general where these different sons went, right? One went east, one went south, one went into Europe. So what makes it difficult to really figure out where they ended up? Okay, let's back to this side, because you guys, they got your question. So you guys' point.
You know this?
Thoughts?
Evan?
Pastor?
The names of the places are different. We don't call them the same thing. And they were confusing because we have things that were named one thing, and now someplace else named something the same exact thing.
There were a number of possible answers for this. So that is one correct answer. The names have changed over time. Does anybody from this side chance to get a point back? What are some other reasons that made it difficult to figure out? So the names have changed over time. Any other ideas? Okay. The names have changed with the languages. The people groups overlapped. right? It wasn't like this one group only went that way. Some of their people came back and settled over here, and some of these guys went over there. There was intermixing, so that made it challenging. That makes it challenging. It was so long ago that a lot of the archaeological records are gone. We just don't have the information of where they settled. All right, so back to this side, on the left. How would spreading out from Babel have affected the level of civilization? This we talked about in the intro. You have an answer? I wasn't sure if that was a raised hand. Okay?
Well, it divided your knowledge base because they couldn't communicate with each other. It was kind of be like having a library divided up into different sections, and anybody that could read one section couldn't read the other.
Yep, that is exactly the right answer. Their focus would have been, I don't think I have it here, but yes, I even mentioned it in the intro, right? You have the family groups dividing up. If these guys were good at, if their part in society was, food prep, now they got to live off on their own, right? They're not going to know about hunting animals and doing stonework, right? So exactly. Their focus would have been on finding new places to settle and keeping themselves alive, right? They're going back to the start. Okay, so I'll give you that point. It's now 1-2. You guys are ahead by 1. And it's you guys' question, so you can increase your lead. All right. Considering that people were seeking to survive in new wilderness, how might we explain caveman from a biblical perspective? Listen.
Caves were basically already prepared shelters. They didn't have to build a house. They were easy to live in.
Okay, so this is people going through a hard time and trying to find an easy way to make it. And caves would have provided shelter. That's exactly right. These were simply people who were living in caves for shelter, some temporarily as they traveled, and others for permanent shelter. All right, back to this side. According to the Bible, how many races do we have today? This one should be straightforward. Okay?
It's one.
One. Is that what you're going to say, Don? One is the right answer. Right? What we refer to often as races, as in color or culture, is really just ethnical differences between cultures. Right? There's only one race, human race. One. Okay, back to the right. What is God's purpose in his work with different nations? What is his goal? There's a verse that we looked at that says, God works with the different nations in order to accomplish something. What is it? Multiply and fill the earth? No, that is not the right answer. All right, let's go back to this side.
Well, he uses the nations to accomplish his will. And there are certain things that he's prophesied will happen, and he puts people up and pulls people down and allows the things that happen so that his will be basically fulfilled. And I think it's essentially to prove Satan wrong, because we have the dispensations, and he's showing man and Satan that no matter what the situation is, he is just. God is just. And people can use the argument, well, if I only had this, or if this was the situation, well, God's given us a chance to experience all the conceivable situations in relationship to God and man, and we still fail without him as our Savior.
So to accomplish his will is the right answer. The people should see the Lord. Yeah, he says that. He's working all things so people see him. Good. All right. So that was you all's question. They just caught up. So it's now 3-3. Okay. Back to this side. How did God divide the nations? Don.
By language.
By language. That is the right answer. It was not by race, by color, by look. It was by language. That's how he divided the nations. All right, so that's a point. Back to the side. How would the dispersion from Babel result in distinct skin colors around the globe? We do have distinct skin colors and looks. How could that be related to languages? What's the connection?
God made it by family. Given that by family.
It's by family, and how would that impact colors and stuff? They would carry what with them? Their own genetic makeup, right? It's based on genetics. Because it was divided by family, the family genetics, because they kept interbreeding, are going to become dominant in that group. The families that settled these areas would have carried those genes in the to the areas they settled. Without mixing with other populations, the skin color would become fixed. So good answer. 4-4. All right, back to this side. Looks like my question is a little bit. Let me see if I can read the question. Yeah, we're just gonna skip this one. I missed the question.
This passage knows a lot of things are pretty good passage.
All right. Lesson 32.
I couldn't get the question.
There was no question. So you're not alone. Lesson 32. Job's suffering. The account of Job demonstrates that God cares for the individual. Both Job and Abraham probably lived around 2100 BC, and both descended from Shem, but from separate grandsons of Noah. Job was viewed by the community as a great man, a philanthropist. Job viewed himself as a normal person. He mourned for the death of his children. He suffered physically. He argued with his wife. He questioned God. God viewed Job as part of a spiritual warfare against Satan to bring God glory and accomplish great spiritual good, not only in Job's life, but in many, many others, even down to us. The book of Job shows us that God works at the individual level to accomplish his will. All right, so I think we're on this side still for the question. So the question is, why does God devote an entire book to an otherwise unknown individual near the beginning of the Bible who is not part of the line of Christ? I mean, Job seems like an outlier. So this is for these guys first. You'll get a chance. Job seems like an outlier. He's not part of the line of Christ. Okay, you've gotten 3. Let me see if anybody else does. If not, then I'll go to you. All right? What do you think? Yes?
It's because normal people, he's just a normal person.
That's exactly right. That's what we said in the lesson. God is intentionally picking a person who's not part of the critical line of Christ to show us that God is concerned about the individual, right? The account of Job demonstrates that God's sovereignty not only applies to mankind as a whole, but that it extends down to each individual. He cares about each of us.
Was it the change of the people arriving?
It is. And we'll have a question on that later on. All right. Good. So we're back to this side. Okay. Does God care for all people? Yes. Yes. Okay.
I got that right.
Carla answered that one, so let me just pick on you since you're my wife. He does care for all people. Is there a difference between unsaved and saved, though? Between believers and unbelievers?
I think he cares specifically for his children.
He's got a special care for his children. He does love all people. We know that from John 3:16.
You told me that yesterday.
Yes, we know that he has special care for his children.
He has special care for you because
Hey.
you love her.
All right, it is now 5-5. So we're back to this side. How,
Too fast.
too fast? You don't have to write them down. I can print them for you. How does the focus of the book of Job differ from the account of God's work in the world from creation to Abraham? And just a hint, John mentioned this just a few minutes ago. The focus of Job kind of is a transition. What's the transition? First part of Genesis, All the previous lessons were focused on something, and Job was kind of the transition in our lessons for previous focus to a new focus. What was the change in focus? Does anybody remember that? Okay, we're going to come back to this side. John?
From a single man to mankind.
Right, and the other way around, right? From mankind, which was the first half of Genesis, right? Talking about from Adam and Eve to Abraham, the focus is on mankind in general. But now Job, especially in our lessons, is the transition to, no, God's focused now down on the individual. From that point on, same time, Abraham and Job are the same time. From that time on, the focus is going to be on Abraham and his descendants. It's a change of focus. Okay, good. Thank you. So, these guys are now one ahead. Come on, you guys got to catch up now. All right, here we go. True or false? Okay, this is for you all. Mankind is able to accurately judge God's sovereignty and love based on external observations of the physical world around us. True or false? Okay, true? Is that a consensus? Okay, let's go back to this guy. True or false? False. False is the right answer. You guys just caught up.
That was easy.
That's a good job. All right, here's why it's false, right? It's false because there's more going on than what we can see externally, right? Remember, what was Job's question? Why is this happening to me? He could see all the stuff on this physical realm, and he was saying, it doesn't make sense. What was going on? There was a spiritual aspect that Job could not see, right? So we can't understand accurately, perfectly, what's going on with how God's working because we don't see the spiritual side of things.
But I guess it depends on how much you want to see. Depends. If God only shows externally with the heavens and everything that already been created, that is sufficient to know that there is God. So that depends on, that's why it was a trick question.
Yeah.
Accurately judge.
So Lucy, as teachers, we run into this all the time, right? What is the rule for when the students disagree with the teacher's answer? The teacher's right. Okay. I'm sorry. I see your point, but I can't give you credit. All right. Okay. So you guys just caught up. So now we're back to you all. During the lesson on Job, what were the different views of Job we considered? Can you name one? Okay, I just went over these views in the intro, right? There was 3 views we looked at. Don.
Oh, well,
Just one of them.
the 3 friends considered thought that Job was a sinner.
Okay, so yes, but that was not the name of the view. I agree with you. It was the friends, but I'm specifically looking for the 3 views that we talked about in the lesson. I realize it was a long time ago, so you're close enough. I can give you credit. But does anybody remember specifically what we said the 3 views were? Or at least.
Well, I'll take a stab.
Okay, you weren't here, but go for it. Okay.
So, I wasn't here for
Go for a stab.
If he hadn't sinned, God wouldn't be punishing him. That was one view. That's what I come up.
Okay. Yes, that's a great perspective. That's not the right answer.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the right answer. Don, you're going to get the credit. So we looked at it from 3 different people's views. Okay? We looked at it from the world's view, right? That's the friends. So Don, that's what you're getting at. We looked at it from Job's view. What was Job's view of himself, right? Job looked at himself as just a normal person. And then what was the 3rd view? It was God's view, right? God's view was Job is involved in this spiritual battle against Satan, right? He's accomplishing these great things. So there's no way you could have gotten that one. It was specific to the lesson. But you got the point, so good job. All right. Back to this side. How did the world view Job? Yes. Answer by.
Well, he answered, well, yeah. Like, you didn't.
So I'd have to give him points for it. Maybe you could restate.
So, if he must have done something wrong to be getting all this punishment from God.
Yeah. So it was a little broader than that when we said the world's view, right? Because remember, Job was a rich guy, right? So the world viewed, and he was doing things. Like, the world viewed him as a philanthropist. He's a good guy. But they viewed him as somebody who probably has gotten his wealth crookedly, maybe. You know, he's clearly fallen into judgment, right? The world viewed him as a fallen philanthropist. That's what we said in the lesson. But yeah, you got it.
How do you spell that word? Oh, okay.
All right, so I'll give you that point. Good job. How did Job, this is back to you all, how did Job view himself? I think I just said the answer to this one. As a normal guy, that's right. Job viewed himself as just a normal guy. Good. Oops, I'm giving the wrong people points here. All right, it's now 8-7, but we're on you guys, back to you guys. How did God view Job? Pastor?
Really, as a servant that was following after him.
Yeah, exactly. A servant who is involved in the spiritual warfare.
Can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
God needed Job to prove something to Satan, I think.
Isn't that interesting? He's using a fallen man, but a servant, to actually, in warfare against Satan, to prove something to Satan. So yeah, I totally
I
agree.
guess God wants Job to have more knowledge than he already thinks he has so much, but he doesn't really, because he doesn't have the Bible that we have. So we know much more than Job. So the thing is that God comes to him to give him that knowledge.
Yeah, one of my questions, and maybe the next question, I think no, it's not that one. One of my questions is, what was God accomplishing with Job? And I think that's what you're getting to. It's like, in addition to this battle against Satan, God's also working to teach Job something, right? And we talked about in the lesson, God's often doing multiple things at the same time. So yeah, he was working to help Job understand his character. Okay, back to this side. Why was Job confident that he was righteous before God? Now, this side is a very specific answer in the lesson. We know Job recognized that he was a sinner, but he was confident that he was righteous. Why did he have that confidence?
Because he did what God told him to do. If he sinned, he sacrificed. He sacrificed for his kids, for cover their sins.
Okay, so I'm going to take that a little bit further. So yes, I think you're on the right track, but I want to take it a little bit further. Don, did you have a perspective?
Well, I think that even though it doesn't, come right out and say that, he considered the God to be his righteousness.
Yeah. So what you're going towards is, because he was doing all these things, that indicated that he had faith in God. He was a faithful servant. And Don, the true reason is he was relying on God for his righteousness. Remember, he says, I can't remember the exact quote, but he's like, I know my Redeemer lives, and I'll see him in my flesh. He knew he needed a Redeemer. He was relying on God as his righteousness, not himself.
In spite of his friends, his wife telling him he's wrong, he knew he was right because he was following whatever the Lord said.
Yes, exactly. He was relying on the Lord's righteousness. That's why he could be so confident. Why can we be confident as Christians that we're righteous? It's not because of our own, goodness.
Right.
It's because we're leaning on Christ's righteousness. It's imparted to us. So that was the big emphasis of that lesson. Okay, we're back to the right. What part of God's plan did Job know about? I can't remember where I was going with this. Yeah, I'm just going to skip over this one. Let's go to lesson 33. All right, lesson 33. This was God's call on Abraham. The nations of the world were divided by family groups based on the separation of the languages at the Tower of Babel. Scattering from Babel sent civilization back to the Stone Age. God made all people from one blood, and there is only one race that descended from Adam and Eve. So we see a little bit of overlap in this lesson. God called Abram at the time, from Ur of the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan, leaving his family, going to Canaan, and lying to Pharaoh. I don't know why I have that. Abraham, I guess I skipped down. Abraham was a man of faith, but struggled to implement his faith through leaving his family, going to Canaan, lying to Pharaoh. Faith starts embryonic, but grows as we exercise it by trusting God and seeing Him faithful in difficult times. Abraham's goal is stated in Hebrews 11:10, for he looked for a city which hath foundation, whose builder and maker is God. All right, so we're back to the right-hand side. And the question is, what was Abraham's father and brother's name? This would be a really hard question, but I got the Bible verse right there. You should be able to figure it out.
Terah, Nahor, and Haran.
Good. And who was the father?
Terah.
Terah, right? Nahor and Haran were the brothers. Good. All right. So I'm going to offer a general bonus. Anybody who wants to raise their hand, which one of these guys had died in Ur? Yeah, I got it.
Haran.
Haran, that's the right answer. All right, you guys are up by 1 now. We are back on the left. How did Abraham come to know God when the majority of the people in Ur and even his father worshipped idols? He's essentially living in a pagan area. How is it that he became a Christian or a believer?
Because God spoke to him.
Okay? There were a number of possible reasons. The Bible doesn't actually tell us. One of our possible answers was God reached out to him. So that is a correct answer. Now, bonus for you guys, since these guys got the other bonus. What were other possible reasons? There was a couple of reasons. Yes?
Well, if you look at a chart of the longevity of everybody living, essentially there's only 1 or 2 generations between Adam and these people, and everybody knew everything was going on. That's why Job knew so much about God, because he knew the people that knew God.
Yes, that is exactly another one of the answers. It turns out Shem was still alive, and he was alive for 150 years while Abraham was alive. So, yeah, this guy knew Shem, most likely, okay? 2 other reasons. So I'll open up the general bonus. What are some other reasons? Let's see if anybody has another idea.
Well, the Bible doesn't record that any other God spoke to Abraham.
Okay, help me out. I didn't catch what you're saying.
Well, in other words, God spoke directly, came to Abraham and spoke directly to Abraham.
Okay. Yes, but that's the one that George said, I think. I think you're on the same track as George, which is God may have reached out to him directly. Right? That's the point. Yep. Okay, we got that one. Looking for a different one.
What was the question?
Okay. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. How was it that Abraham came to the Lord? What are some reasons why Abraham might have come to the Lord? So we've got God might have reached out to him directly, which is what you and Don were on.
Yeah.
And then Shem was still alive. So what else?
I read that
At least one more.
Abraham was not, when he's making idols with his father, he was not he was seeking for something else. And God reached out to him.
Okay, so that's a good, but I think it still goes back to God reached out to him. So let me give you what my thinking on it was.
God promised Abraham something, so over time he kind of suffered belief and so on.
We definitely see God working in Abraham's life to get him to grow, right? So I think the one that I'm thinking of is, remember that this Ur is the plain of Shinar. And that's where the people settled after Ararat, right? They came down out of the mountains of Ararat and they settled in the plain of Shinar. So this is the original civilization that existed after the flood. And this is the same area where most likely Job and his friends lived, right? And it's also the area where Shem lived. So you've got this, he's still in the same place where they settled after the flood. So that's what I was thinking of. Okay, we've milked that one enough, I think. Back to this side. Oh. I only have 5 minutes left, and I have 57 questions.
Next week.
Okay, back to this side. By the way, it's 11 to 10, but it's you guys' turn for the questions, so you can tie it up. How do we know that the call came to Abraham when he was in Ur? Now, the reason this question was in the original lesson is it says that God, the verse actually says that God told Abraham's father, Terah, to move, right? But we actually know that the command was given to Abraham. So how do we know that it was given to Abraham in Ur, before he was in that other city? I can't remember right now. What's that? Okay, that's part of it. So that's part of the answer. Because God said, hey, I want you to leave your family behind, which means God was giving it to Abraham, not to anyone else. There's one other reason I was thinking of.
Is it dealing with the tents of the command?
That's exactly right. It's dealing with this word. Now the Lord had said unto Abraham, right? So even though the context of this is when they're in the other city. Pastor, do you remember the name of the other city they went to?
I wanted to say it's Canaan, but that's wrong.
No, it's the one that up in Syria.
It starts with an H.
Haran.
Is it Haran?
Haran.
Haran. Okay, yeah, Haran. This was given in Haran, right? So that's the context there. That's why the question's there. Good. Good 2 reasons. Okay, back to you all. What is the blessing God is referring to in this passage? And I'll go ahead and read the passage. It says, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So this question specifically is focused at this bottom part. In thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. What is that referring to? So it's you guys. Okay, let me see if anybody else has got a thought.
Jesus will come through the line of Abraham.
Okay, that's the right answer. It's a prophecy of Christ coming through Abraham's line. The Lord Jesus will come through the line of Abraham. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, back to this side. What challenges did Abraham face in order to obey God's command to move to Canaan? And the context here was, remember we were talking about the things that, I can't remember exactly what, Abraham had to overcome challenges to grow his faith. So we talked about, what are the challenges? You know, in Hebrews it talks about Abraham being this great man of faith. But if we look at the story, they were really, from Abraham's perspective, hard times he had to go through. And God used those to grow his faith. So what were some of the hard times that he had to go through?
Around the bush.
Yeah, and by that we mean, I would interpret that to mean he didn't know where he was going, right? He had to just trust, and God said, go, and I'll tell you where to go, right? So it was like uncertain where to go.
The land he ended up in he would have been a foreigner.
Okay, so he's a foreigner. That's right. We talked about that. The languages were different. There's a number of other reasons, but I don't want to give away some of my other answers. So it's this side. I'll come to you in a second.
It seemed like I remember some about it was challenged because of the different religions and he's going to another country, the language barrier, religious barrier, cultural barrier. Yeah, all of that. Exactly. Good. Okay, so I'm going to give you the point. Let me see what Linda's thinking over here.
Well, another barrier was that his wife, who was also his half-sister, was gorgeous, and he was afraid that people might kill him
That's exactly one. That's another one that I came up with. It's like fear of being attacked, right? He's going to a foreign place that people may attack him for his wife, for his money. Exactly, George.
As he was traveling, he came to places. One place he had famine, and he had to move to Egypt. Egypt, he had problem with the Pharaoh. Again, there was a king that he had a problem with, that he wanted to kill him. And then he had to help his nephew with the Sodom and Gomorrah area, that he had to go and fight there. And he had problem with his nephew, that he had to move out from that area to another area where he had difficulties. But he withstood all those difficulties with God's help.
Yeah, so there was a number of challenges he had to overcome. Part of what you're saying is, think of it, it wasn't just Abraham himself traveling alone. He had this massive amount of cattle. He had his family he had to take care of. So that was a big burden to have to try and trust God to keep safe. The other thing that we talked about in the lesson was the place he was leaving was civilization, right? He was leaving the city to go live in the wilderness. That had to be hard. All right, so we are essentially out of time. I think I'll stop there. It is tied, 12-12. Let me see if I can find a good example, good one here that might be a good.
Get a candy bar.
That one's easy. That was easy. That was easy. Okay, this is a good one. So this is general for anybody. This will be the tiebreaker. Why can faith the size of a mustard seed why is it still able to move mountains?
Because you got God there to help you.
Sharon, that's the right answer. God is the one behind the faith that's making it happen, right? And the reason this came out in the lesson is we talked about Abraham's faith started small, just like all of our faith starts small. And he had to go through experiences in life in order for God to grow his faith. As he went through them, and he failed a number of times, it doesn't mean he wasn't a believer. It just means his faith was still growing. And so, because God is behind our faith, even that small, teeny, tiny faith that we start out when we first believe God, that's all it takes, because it depends on God, not on us. All right. So this side wins. Thanks to Sharon. Yay! All right. Let's close in prayer, and then we'll be dismissed. Dear Lord, thank you for all you've done for us. Thank you for your word. Thank you that it doesn't depend on us, dear Lord. It depends on trusting in you and the power you put behind us. I pray that you would help us during the morning service to listen, and then bless the fellowship